the Cleveland International Film Festival, where I've been for 19 years. It's one of the Oscar qualifiers in all three categories. I'm also the director of programming at Film Pittsburgh and the Lawerence International Film Festival in Rhode, on top of that.
Hey y'all, it's working? No. Hey y'all. I'm Sara Thompson. I'm from Oklahoma City, just about 6 hours away, so I totally appreciate all the y'all's Southern hospitality here. So I'm from Beth Center. I'm the director of programming. I was the shorts programmer for 6 years before that. We just got our Oscar qualifying status in 2 categories, so thank you. I'm very excited to learn a lot from these guys up here too, because I know that my job's going to change quite a bit. But we are the largest film festival in Oklahoma, so really what I'm here to offer is just like advice on how to come to really cool regional festivals where you can make fun connections and just show your films to awesome audiences.
Yeah, my name is David Josh Lawerence. I started off as an actor and then went into writing and became a producer out of necessity, as we all should be doing. And I continue to write and act as well, but have the added advantage of recently becoming, well, 3 years ago becoming the head of acquisitions for Glasshouse Distribution, which is a distribution company by filmmakers for filmmakers. We were tired of being screwed over by distribution companies, and so we created our own. And so, yeah, just trying to change the idea that, film is a risky investment. It is, but a little less risky if we all do our part and are honest about what we're doing as distributors. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Shawn Quirk. For the past 10 years I've been the program director for the Rhode Island International Film Festival, and we take place every August. We're also an Oscar qualifier in categories, and we're looking for new voices. And for all of you filmmakers and anyone making new films, that's our goal, is to really discover the new voices of the next generation. And we also have a Vortex sci-fi, fantasy, and horror festival every August. And we have a Rhode documentary / short film festival every April. So we really try our best to curate filmmakers year-round, for not only for the main festival, but for our other sidebars as well.
Now, the reason I say that this is the most important panel that you're going to see today is you've already made your work. So how does everyone get to see your work? And these are the experts that'll help get you there, so please feel free to reach out to them after this panel. We have until 1 o'clock to conduct this, so I'm sure you'll have tons of questions for them. They're very available and accessible, so please, after this, reach out to them. First off, one of our colleagues earlier said, if you're not thinking about distribution strategy in the script writing phase, you are behind. Is that right? Is that correct? And go for it, whoever wants to start going on.
Yeah, so it's super important. There's a couple things that I always tell filmmakers, and the most I ever learned about filmmaking was going to a market. As a filmmaker, I've made a dozen films, playing different parts from acting to writing, etc. And I thought I knew what it was to make a movie. And so I went to a market and I listened to people pitch these distributors non-stop what they're doing. And each distributor, I'm watching them, their eyes glaze over and they're just like, yeah, not for us, not for us, not for us. And you just spent a ton of time, a ton of money, your whole life to make this movie that now you can't sell. You've got a really awesome, expensive home video, and that's it. So when I was at the market, I realized there are ways that you can bulletproof your scripts, right? And I'm not so I worked also in the studio system as a writer for an animation studio. And we were working on like $150 million films, and development for those films took about like 3-4 years, right, of development. When we got done with our pitches, or we got done with the stories that we were going to present to our CEO or COO or CCO, Chief Creative Officer, which is the most important part in an animation studio, when we get there and we pitch our thing, and then they go, yeah, but my daughter really likes trolls. Can you put trolls in the movie? And we're all like, you ass. And like, and so what I like to do is what I call bulletproofing your script, which is it's not taking those notes and making a Frankenstein out of your story. It's taking your personal story that is a relatable human experience story and then placing that story within a genre that sells. Because in your first couple movies, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make compromises. And at a certain amount of time, you've made too many compromises for you to sell your movie, right? So on your first one, make sure it's a very sellable genre. You know, like you wouldn't make Roma as your first movie, right? They'd laugh at you. But because he had already done so much commercial, successful work, he was able to go back and do his passion project that he really wanted to do, and he didn't have to make any compromises. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you want to do. You want to make compromises on your first film. Make sure that film is sellable, meaning it's in a genre that sells. And we were talking about genre, we were talking about action, we're talking about horror, we're talking about family comedies. And I say family comedies because family comedies can actually, they don't necessarily need big names. Same with sci-fi and same with action. You want the big names. If you can get a big name, awesome. But if you can't, you stick to a genre where the people are fans of the genre, not the people that are watching in the genre, right? They're fans of the concept. And so that's how you so let's take your personal story, right? Personal story about my mom passed away, and I had to take care of my little sister, right? Take that little story. That little story can happen in the future. That little story can happen in a whole other universe that you can imagine, right? Now you have to think about budget, etc. when you're also writing these things and it's the first thing you're going to do, but you're bulletproofing, right? I like to take parameters that challenge my creativity and use those, you know what I mean? Like the same way that you use locations you have available to, right? Like I had a location of a log cabin, and then I had my house, and what can I make a log cabin in my house? And ideas start percolating. Oh, these people go to this log cabin. Okay, and it all happens like that. So parameters are good for your screenwriting. Yeah, you'll get to a point where if you're writing for a studio and there's no limit, yeah, sky's the limit. Write what comes to you. But until you're at that studio level, your first movies should fit into a genre that sells. And then I'll go into later on what genres sell where, because different territories have different censor laws, etc. And so that's the reason why I say family comedy is actually a genre that sells, because only raunchy comedies are made with big names. Those are the only ones that sell and make their money back domestically. You can't do a raunchy comedy and expect it to sell foreign. So that's why you kind of have to, nerf the corners a little bit on those.
Paul, could you walk us back just a little bit a second?
I think this is...
I can see that you're...
Yeah, because I think we're sort of blending into the previous panels now, because I think everything you said is absolutely relevant to features and is very not relevant to shorts, and you've all just made shorts. And that question, what you started with this, is it important when you're writing the script? And if you're going to, first of all, if you're at that level and you're ready, write and make a feature. And I'm a huge shorts fan, but I'm going to agree with everybody who talked before us that the only way to make this a sustainable living in this business for you as creative artists and filmmakers is just to start making features and get good at that. But shorts is a good place to practice that craft and learn. And we play everything. So there are no, but you're not going to make money. It's important to know, there are a few that find a niche with a short film, but do not set out to make money. Set out to learn the craft. And all of you here have already succeeded on the first very important goal, which has already been brought up, and I'll reiterate. You finished a film that made it here, which is, as everyone has already said, one of the greatest events. This is like my sixth time here. I will never not come unless they don't invite me. I mean, this is an amazing, amazing event. And you've already finished, but the next most important thing you can do, in my opinion, is now learn from finishing. What can I get better at? And how does this translate into making a feature and advancing the craft? And that's where everything he just said becomes critical. Now you can't just make any film. You really need to think about where am I going to sell it. To walk it back to shorts, though, when you are writing that script and you are deciding to make a film, I do still think it's helpful to put it in advance. Where am I going to try to play this? If you are making a thriller genre short film, obviously, just as others have already brought up, there are a bunch of festivals that play features and short content in that, but so do we, many of us. I have 4 after-hours programs in Cleveland, and that we actually have more room for that content than any other because we are 2 weekends and we do a different program both Fridays and both Saturday nights. So I end up with 3, 4, 6 hours worth of content that's just after hours, off the wall stuff. So do the homework in advance so that you have a realistic idea of where you are going to spend those limited dollars you have to submit to film festivals, and make sure it's focused on the festivals that play the kind of film. Don't just use Movie Maker Magazine's list, that's a great place to start, but their 50 may not have more than 3 that play the kind of film you just made, so now you've got to shift to where does a film that I've seen that did well on the festival circuit play before, and follow their trail. Oh, here's the 15 festivals I can see that they played, those are your 15. That's where to land. So yes, I think it's relevant, but for shorts, I think you really can't get away with anything. Just know in advance, where am I going to spend my money to submit it and hope it plays.
I want to take it to you, Shawn. I was going to hit you next. Go. Say what you were going to say, and then I have other questions for you.
Yeah, shorts are vital for a number of reasons, but it's also important to keep in mind that there are 2 different art forms. So the way you structure a short is very different with how you structure a feature. And that's important to keep in mind from the get-go, but why would you even make a short in the first place? And I'm going to be an advocate for shorts. Yes, it's a proof of concept, but it's also a proof of talent. And that's really key. So, really important. So before anyone wants to finance a larger project, they're going to want to see that you can work with actors, that you can create a well-structured story. It doesn't even have to have anything to do with the feature you're going to do, but it is a proof that you have the creative, you have the personal capital, like you as a person have the capital, the creative capital to be an asset for the project. And maybe you could write yourself a salary if you had proof that you were talented through this short that you just did. That went on to win a lot of awards and prove a success. So yeah, that's key. But that short is going to be structured very different than what your feature is going to be. It won't have 3 acts. It's going to be about one moment in time, and how these characters revolve around that moment. And that's key. So it's it's a short story. How many short stories become novels? I don't know, probably not many. So it's a different concept, it's a different genre, but embrace it, and you can use that to really propel your career, because the short film is a great way to maximize audience, because a lot of people are going to watch the short because it's short. So people will, even a busy person can put aside 15 minutes to watch a short. But how many people are going to put aside 2 hours to watch a film by somebody they don't know anything about, unless someone's already told them that it's good? So the short film is a great way to just sneak in there and get a lot of people to watch you, and then they're going to be ready to watch your next film because you already have an audience for it. So you create the pipeline with the short, and then you have the pipeline ready for the feature.
And I couldn't agree more. I think the thing we've left out because of the previous panels too is there's an artistic value to shorts, because there are so many short stories that are not features. I've heard it said over and over again, you could end up putting that moment in a longer story that's about something else, but it's no longer about that moment that you want to highlight artistically. So, and I know a lot of feature filmmakers who still agree with this because they go back not to make money, but in between features, they make passion projects that are short films, that are a work of art about a moment that they want that moment to be the moment in the film, not just a moment in the film. But, so when I start off with urging you to make features, it's because I want you to be sustainable. Then I'm going to come right back and then find those passion projects and bring me great shorts in between every feature where you're making money.
And this is a great place to ask this question. So there are a lot of different types of festivals, market festivals, Oscar qualifiers. What does it all mean? I'll start with Sara. What does it mean to be an Oscar qualifier? And then for those of you who do have the film festival, so Paul, you program 3, Sarah's Dead Center, and Shawn, you do Rhode Island International. What kinds of films are you looking for? So tell me a little bit about the types of festivals and then what you want to see at yours.
Okay. So to be an Oscar qualifier, for what that essentially means is that, so for us, it's short animation and live action shorts. So if you enter our fest and you win one of those 2 awards, then you can start your Oscar submission, seeing that you meet all the other criteria from them. So we just recently got this. It's really exciting. What we are looking for, just to kind of piggyback, I loved all of the panels, but like as someone who loves shorts, like and kind of just into them in a big way, it's like all of my advice is not at all how to make money. It's just about how to get programmed. And I think that like what I love about shorts is that they come at you with such an experimental idea a lot of the times that you're absolutely right, Paul. Like I don't want to watch a documentary about a cat and his camera for an hour and a half, but for 15 minutes that documentary was awesome. And so I think it is a really great calling card for you to like come at this at like, I have this crazy awesome experimental idea and I'm gonna do it in like 6 minutes. And you can really get our attention that way. And so one of the things that we are looking for is shorts. So that's always like the first advice. It's a lot easier to program things that are shorter. And you get more wiggle room that way. It doesn't have to be, as perfect. If I have the choice between programming like 3 like A- awesome shorts or like 1 A+ 40-minute short, like it's a lot easier to make those choices with the shorter ones so that you can have more on your slate. So that would be like my first bit of advice. What was the other question?
No, and that's great. And again, just what do you look for and what is attracting you to invite them into your festival?
Yeah, so it's just like really well-made, authentic, original material, and it's been really cool to be with Dead Center for so long because in the early days, it was much more like, does this look good? And that's kind of the first thing. Does it sound good? Actually, it's the first thing. But we have grown so much, and like all the festivals up here with us, that it really is like, how are you going to get my attention? Because there's so much content, and how is the story original and authentic to you? Because you do see so many of those things kind of over and over and over, where it's like, okay, you're coming back at me with this one type of story. This is a go-to story that lots of people choose, but when you're coming with something super experimental, authentic, original, that's really what catches our attention.
And that also applies to features.
Look, I know all my festivals play all genres of film, including experimental, and in the end, it's really good storytelling. I always like to say, and to piggyback off of hers, I call it, make your film as tight as it can be and right on point. You have a through line in a short. What is the moment, the story that you're trying to tell? Stay on that story. It's not a feature. You can have some peripheral things happening in a feature that add context. In a short, stay on the through line, keep it as tight as you possibly can, because it's always easier to program shorter. But if you just happen to have a really tight through line that's 30 minutes long, we play plenty of those because they're short features. I mean, they really are. It's like, in that case, if you're making a 30 to 40 minute, it better feel like a feature by the time we're done watching it. That's okay, because there's some excellent ones that probably wouldn't do well at 90 minutes trying to stretch it, but it's amazing at 30 minutes. But if you are 30 minutes, you need to be that much better than all the 5-minute shorts. It's gotta be that tight and right. And the other thing I want to say to all of you related to this, because so many of you are new at doing this, I've been a programmer at Cleveland for 19 years, and I came to it as a film fan. I have absolutely no background in film. After 19 years, now I have a background in film from just consuming and watching and meeting so many of you. But for those of you who are really early, I want to say this, 19 years ago, and until this day, I still feel like an imposter. Because in this business, nobody really knows. That's why they said you don't have to go to film school. Many of the best filmmakers have no film school. The best thing is to be a film fan, because in the end, you make films for other people. You should make it for yourself first, but in a way that's going to be relatable so that your story can reach others. So why I said that is to say to you, if you're feeling it, and I'm not going to ask for hands, I'll just say it for all of us, it's okay to feel like you're an imposter. Just keep doing your thing and keep finishing again and again and telling your stories.
That also applies to features.
All right, Shawn, how do they get your attention?
Well, for me, I'm looking for everything, as we all said. I mean, because we do animations, we do experimental, we do drama, we do everything. But what stands out amongst all those genres anyway is, intent. That every creative choice that you're doing, you clearly did it for a reason. And in fact, we can tell that just by watching so many. We can separate what's intentional and what's hesitant. Like you can sense hesitancy in the work. So as long as the intent's there and it's sincere and you're assertive with what your choices are, that cut to black is there for a reason. Like those things matter. That first shot, the last shot. Like how is it edited? Is it frenetic? Is it long paced rhythm? Those things are key, and that's all structure. But that's like the framework for everything. And then what we look for outside of that is redefining the archetype. How do you reinvent something that we've seen before? So like change things around, reinvent things, show a new perspective. All those help to really showcase new work, and it stands out because it's something that we haven't seen before. But it may also be an echo of something we have, but it's a new reinvention or reincarnation of that. And that's key.
David is also my favorite. David, Lawerence, I'm going to get to you about some very specific things with features. But one thing I do want to talk a little bit about is the changing environment of the film festival in the COVID reality, post-COVID world, hopefully post, that we live in. And Sara, you touched on it earlier that your job is changing and the festivals are changing. How have you adapted to those changes, and are the film festivals still viable? Is there a place for them? Do the laurels matter? Some of our past colleagues were throwing a little shade on the laurels. Talk a little bit about that.
Do you mind?
Yeah, take it.
Laurels are key if they're used the right way. So the laurels are a brand. So as long as you're using the right brand, you can brand your film really well. So as long as you're selective in what you want that brand to be, and if you have the option to use that brand, I would take full advantage of it. But you just want to be selective. Like you only want to have really 1 or 2 or maybe 3 brands max. Just one is actually the best. If you get into a really good festival, you want that to be your brand. And if you use that brand, all the other festivals may notice. So if you get into a festival that you really wanted to get into, maximize that fully. And I've had a lot of films that have been on the circuit for a year or even a year and a half, and they get into RIP, and all of a sudden everyone starts answering their emails. So it's like, because they started using that laurel, and they already had that, started having that brand, next thing you know, they're in Chicago International. They go off to maybe Cleveland, and it's a circuit. And the same thing with Cleveland. We'll get lunch in Cleveland, and it just becomes not that it matters, but it helps. It's a brand, and that helps. It helps create that momentum for your film. It's the first step, really, to the distribution process.
He's right, and one of the things that's really important to note is that we programmers, there's so many short films out there. One of the places we shop is other trusted festivals. We know their curation as well. I mean, I have a group of 7 programmers that are close friends that we literally share our lists here. So you're likely to get, just from playing any one of my festivals, 6 emails from other programmers directly, just inviting you just because we've worked together for so many years and been doing this, that we trust each other's curation. And that's one of our shortcuts, not necessarily to program the films, but to make sure we're seeing the best stuff that's out there to compare against the newer stuff. Because every festival's in a different timeline. So one festival's seeing 150, 200 new films that we didn't even get a chance to look at for Cleveland, etc. So just know that one of the values of getting into certain festivals is seeing how they relate to other festivals, and if the curation's strong enough, you're automatically now being raised to other festivals as well.
I would just also add, sometimes if I am going through our submissions on Film Freeway and I do see the picture that has like 10 laurels or something, the first thing that my mind thinks is like, oh, everybody's already seen this. Like it doesn't, I think, and I'm sure David can speak a lot to this with distribution, but about like wanting to keep your film fresh feeling so that it feels like the festival or the distributor is getting something new.
That's a great point.
That's why I like being like 1, 2, max 3. If you have more, you don't have to show everything either. You can be selective.
Well, for our filmmakers that are thinking about doing a festival circuit and run, how much should they budget for, and how many should they apply for? And let's give them your top 3. Aside from yours.
But also say yours
There is no
And
time.
I'm sorry, from the back?
Yes, but also say yours again so I can write them down.
Indeed. Cleveland International Film Festival is Paul. Dead Center Film Festival is Sara. And Rhode Island International Film Festival is Shawn Quirk. All right, Paul, let's take it with you.
There is no 3, and there's no 3 for the first question that we answered, because your type of film could mean it's a different 3, and I don't know the best 3 for every genre film and all those things, but it is, use that list to make sure you pick 3 that match up with your film, that are on one of those lists, or that a film like yours has played and done well at, so that you're strategically using it. I would say you want to be in the, just because, look, get used to rejection, and it has nothing to do with your film. We've reached a point in curation where 20 years ago when I started, no problem. Everything that was really, really good was getting in the festival. Now, only half of what's really, really good is getting. I mean, the saddest part of my job is when I send the rejections and there's all these films that I've adopted, I love them, we're not playing these because there's 300 really good films out of the 4,000 I got, and I can only play 150 of them. So get used to rejection. With that in mind, you can't just apply to 3. You need to be in the 10 to 20, but recognize, don't blast beyond that right away, because what I've already said to you matters. If you strategically submit to Rhode Island and Cleveland, and you get into one of them, that's going to lead to some links automatically. Save the money so that you can respond. Someone like me is automatically going to offer you 50%. And I'm really generous, so I'll tell you in advance, if I just don't have it, I'm probably going to give you a waiver, just because it's not about the submission fees. But at 4,000 submissions, we can't just waive the submissions for everyone. But if you're coming to me, there's a connection already anyway, so I'm, like they do, that most of us are, willing to be somewhat generous with that. So use your strategy at the beginning to find your 10 to 20 you're going to start with, and then see which one, wherever you get in, that's going to guide your next process. And usually, like I said, if you get into Cleveland, you're automatically going to start getting emails from a bunch of people that, look at our lists or that I'm communicating with, and they're going to offer you discounts, some will do waivers, stuff like that, and that will help you get 40 and 50 submissions out there at half the price that it would have cost you if you just dove in.
Now the key thing is look for festivals that showcase a lot of short films. If you're submitting a short film, just you want to have a few, everyone wants to submit to maybe like a few of those, the dream festivals. But with that said, a lot of, like Sundance only picks so many shorts, And does your short really match what they're looking for? They have a very certain type of short that they're looking for. And every festival has they have their own kind of type of film they're looking for. So look at the programs. See if you match what they've done in the past in terms of their selection. But I would target some short film festivals that really make the short film priority as part of your mix. So you want to think of Encounters, for example. That's in the UK, nothing but short films. And then you have Palm Springs, of course, a lot of short films. Another one would be Regard. It's kind of out there, different, but they're in Quebec, and they do nothing but short films as well. So make that part of your. I would focus on a few festivals that like focus on short films as a priority. But then, another one is New Zealand. There's Show Me Shorts. It's a short film festival. So, and the Oscar qualifying list is just a nice way to just. Those are festivals of quality, of merit, and it's a nice guide to start with, but it's not the be-all, end-all either. There's a lot of amazing festivals outside of that list, but it's a great resource to have to start your search. And I would start with those that are on that list for sure.
Don't be afraid to ask for discounts and waivers, but do it in a strategic way. So here's one of my best tips to give you. Okay, you can say, and for me, you can get away with murder with me because I just love the films and really love it. That was really a bad choice of how to ask for a waiver by saying, we've spent all of our budget for submissions elsewhere. Can you give us a waiver? Okay, you just told someone that you weren't important enough. I didn't really want to go out with you, but if you want to ask me out, I'd be willing to entertain the possibility. So the better answer to that is we're a really small independent film. We didn't have much budget at all. So is there any possibility? If you make it about that you didn't have money, which we all understand, if you make a short film and that's what you're doing, you probably don't have much money. Use that. Don't say I spend my budget, because I get that all the time, and I still give the waivers and stuff. every panel I'm going to say this, so hopefully I'll get fewer and fewer of those emails in the future.
It's funny, that reminds me of the Laurels too, because it's kind of like, well, I guess that wasn't your first choice, so. But yeah, I think the advice you guys gave was great. And the only thing I would throw in there is make sure you're looking at like your completion date and then like the calendar year of when all these festivals take place, because depending on your strategy, you might miss out on some if you don't like think about the timing of it and when you finished your film.
I wish I had another hour with these folks, and we have a limited amount of time, but one of the things that I would reiterate, and I'll get to questions in a second, is that this festival brings down the firewall between the filmmaker and the judges and the people in the industry. You now have seen their faces, you now know a little bit of their background, so after this, take advantage of it. They are very open and willing to answer any questions. I would love to pivot a little bit out of festivals, and I would love to just really ask a specific question for David, Josh, and Lawerence. So when you were looking at films, dominantly features, right? And you're putting together a deal and an offer, how do you describe the terms of a typical deal in 2021, which is different than maybe how it looked a few years ago? So if you could just address today's market.
Yeah, so basically what had happened was as soon as streaming became so popular, all of a sudden you had this and also as soon as technology became a lot smaller and more affordable, more people were making content, right? And because there's a plethora of content out there, it's devalued, right? The whole supply and demand thing. We have plenty of films. Now that makes all of our jobs a lot harder. We have to go through a lot more films now, and many of them aren't up to par, right? So when we're looking, the bar has to be very high. You know what I mean? And because there's so many streaming services, like I said, there's less money. There's less opportunity for you to make your money back. So you have to be very strategic in the way that you shoot your film. I'm always going to explain distribution from the perspective of an actual filmmaker, because that's what I am. And when I'm looking for a feature, there are a couple things that I'm looking for. Number one, I'm looking for, everything that they said earlier that I said, this applies to features also. It needs to be a personal, unique story. It needs to be told in a new way. You know what I mean? If you're writing for yourself and you're like, oh man, if I were to make James Bond, I would have done this instead. I would have done that instead. You know what? He's done that before. No, I'm going to do it this way. Do it different, right? We want that because that's going to, create a more unique experience for the viewer, right? And so you have to look at every film is different. So I look at every film in a different way. Every film has a different distribution plan and a different deal. So I can't really blanket statement it, but I can tell you. When you're first starting out, you need to, and I say this all the time, I'm going to sound like a broken record, your compromises need to be limited, right? The things that you're compromising on. You cannot, and we learn this in shorts too, we cannot compromise on sound. You cannot compromise on performance. You cannot compromise on cinematography. And those things need to be solid. So I can start watching a film and I can decide within 3 seconds whether or not this person put the right amount of care into their film. And so it's very important that first 5 to 10 minutes. Does it get me or does it not? I go through about 35 movies a week and I get about 5 minutes into most of them. If you made it to 10 minutes, I'll probably watch 30. If I get to 30, then I'm out. So what we look for technically is first we look for name talent. That is the most important thing. That is the thing that sells. And if you don't have name talent, that's where laurels are helpful, actually. Because what audiences need is they need somebody to tell them, you're not going to waste an hour and a half watching this. Right? You're not going to waste an hour and a half watching it. Now, if I go to watch a Brad Pitt movie, I know I'm not going to waste time because I like Brad Pitt. I'll look at his face, do anything, right? Right? So the thing that we are not looking for is we are not looking for dramas without name talent. It is the hardest thing to sell. It is the easiest way to put a film on the shelf that you can't do anything with. And that's why I say find a genre to use as parameters to inspire, a genre-driven film within that. If you don't have big actors, because another thing that people think all the time and is, I have enough drama in my own life. I don't want to watch somebody else's drama if I don't even know if they're good, right? I'm like, yeah, I'll watch Meryl Streep's drama because I know I can guarantee she's good, right? So that's the first thing we look for is names. Names and genre. If it's in one of the 3 genre categories that makes money, then we'll look at that as well. And then also, in terms of like creating a deal, I'm also interviewing the filmmakers. You know what I mean? Like, are you going to be easy to work with? Are you going to deliver what I need you to deliver? Do you have marketing materials for us? And this should go in everybody's notes. When you start production, you also need a set photographer who's taking photos of the characters in character. And you need those high quality images because you can't do a screen grab from your feature and use that for the poster. It won't be big enough for us to market. So always have that, because marketing starts when you actually start principal photography. So that's another thing. Do you have deliverables? Did you do everything the proper way? And you can go to our website and we're listing our deliverables list, everything that we need in the spec that we need everything in. So you can start applying that to your production. You know what you have to be shooting in. You know that you need to have an M&E track. You need to know all these things. And so, like I said, every film's different, so the deal is going to be different for every film, right? But what we can always guarantee is we have strategies for how we distribute, how we release your film. So let's say I like your film, I like Shreveport Sun, and I'm like, Shreveport Sun, I want your movie. So I'm going to offer you a deal. My deal these days, if you don't have a big name in your movie, there's no such thing anymore as minimum guarantees. Minimum guarantees is that the MG, minimum guarantees are basically a distributor saying, this is the least amount of money you'll make, and I'm going to give it to you up front. Boom. Right? Now, that is not a win, unless it was the price that it cost you to make the movie, in which case, fuck yeah. But yeah, so you've got your money back, right? That's a win, right? But the majority of places, they got away from MGs. So most distribution companies aren't going to give you an MG. They may give you like 5 or 10 grand, and you're like, yeah, I got 5 or 10 grand, and then maybe you never hear from them again. You know what I mean? Like it happens all the time. So that's the first thing that you're going to discuss, right? Then they're going to tell you there's a percentage that they're going to take. They're like, oh, our percentage is 75 for you, 25 for us, right? Let's just for example. And then you're also subject to fees. So everything they do, they charge back to the sale of the film. So I'm like, Shreveport Sun, I'm going to buy your movie. You're going to sign this contract. You're also signing it, and you're giving me your movie for 7 to 10 years. Now, I'm going to go out and put it on different platforms, etc., right? And again, there's different strategies for once we start doing that. You sign the deal, and in that contract, you need to have a attorney, like not just a regular attorney. You need an actual entertainment attorney, because regular attorneys will just put red lines through everything because they don't understand the entertainment business. But an entertainment attorney will look through everything to see if everything's fair, right? Now, the larger the distribution company that you go with, the more it costs to run that distribution company, right? And they charge you for it, and it comes out of your sales. And so it's very important to keep a close eye on all of it. I'm getting a little bit into my minutia, a little bit too much.
It's okay. We'll have 2 questions after this, and then we'll finish up. Yeah.
Sure. So anyway, so that's what the deal is going to look like, right? And then I'm going to give you a list of deliverables. You deliver those things to me, and then I start. I have about a year to sell your movie. One thing that I do want to say that's very important: be very careful with your feature films. And be very strategized and make sure that you already zeroed in on the distribution companies that you want your film to go to. And the reason why is because the moment your film premieres at a film festival, that date goes on your IMDb. Every buyer looks at that date. and you just started the time clock. Your movie is born, and it really sucks because films are not cars and the tires do not fall off. But what buyers think when they see a date that's like 2 years old, so let's say you've been doing the festival circuit for a whole year, your film's now 1 year old, and it doesn't have distribution yet. Distribution people are saying, oh, it has this year on it. They'll look at that before they watch the movie and they'll go, oh, it's a year old. They still don't have distribution. One of three things is happening, or all of them. Either nobody liked their film, so they didn't distribute it, or nobody liked the filmmakers. It was a good movie, but nobody liked the filmmakers, thought they were too difficult to work with, so nobody bought it in that first year. Or everybody's already seen it, right? And those three things scare buyers away and they devalue your film. So be very strategic about when you're going to go to the festivals, where they are, how long you're going to have for that date. You know what I mean? So very important. If you want, I feel like, and it sucks because there's nothing I can do, but I have buyers that will not take a film that's over 2 years old, even if it's only been in festivals. They will not take it. And
See why
your
this is
film
the most important panel, and we could go on and on and on and on, and I would love to, I have time for 2 questions. Again, these are very accessible individuals, talk to them after. This was the first hand I saw, so Sir, you can go first.
So, the question, 2-part.
Stand up, who are you?
Sorry.
What are your
I'm Alex. I did House Sitters, and I was the cinematographer on Shreveport, signing Amber the Acrobat.
Don't you have a feature too?
Yes.
Yeah.
But actually, my question is related to short film submissions. So, cover letters, do they matter? And also, like the way that name talent matters in the feature world, does that factor into short film submissions at all?
Great question. For those of you who didn't hear, does the cover letter matter, and then names in a short film, does that matter in the same way it may in a feature?
I'm going to do the second one first. Names only matter if the film's good. It's going to plus it up to the top of the list if you made a good short film and there's somebody that everybody's going to recognize. We all want to mix that in because there's going to be very few of those. Surprisingly, there are plenty of short films that have people you know that aren't very good, and we don't play them. We have no problem rejecting it. Usually that person didn't make the film. That's a little harder if they actually made it, to reject it. But if they're just in it, like they usually donated or took a really low scale to go to a film and they don't, good luck with your film, and they move on. The other part of the question, which I'm totally...
Does the cover letter...
The cover letter only matters after the film. I don't know what they're going to say, but I never read a cover letter until this was a good film. Now let me learn about the filmmaker and why they submitted. Cover letters vary wildly, but certainly always include in a cover letter if there's some relationship to the city that the festival's in. There's somebody in your cast, crew, whatever, that hails from there. Again, it won't matter up front, but especially like Cleveland, we have 2 programs that are Ohio, and it has to be about there, made there, or have somebody involved in it that's from there. So that matters then. But for me, cover letter doesn't matter. I don't read them unless I like the film.
If it's short, we'll go there. Yep.
Sure. I'm Jen Carcillo. I wrote or adapted and performed music for Amber the Acrobat, and I acted in that and Hard Up. And so Sarah had mentioned super shorts are great, and how short is that? And then also to follow up with what David said, what about the pandemic? Like our film from 2019 that was in here got into film festivals, and then they all wrote back and said, hey, we've kind of included, and they were good festivals, but we're not really online yet. So now I've got a film that's a 2019, and does that mean it's dead?
So for all of those, real quick again, how short is short? Like, what are you looking for a micro short size? And then really, with the ticking of the clock, 2019, because of the pandemic, does that matter for distribution? Go Sarah first.
So I think, can everyone hear me? We programmed films that were a minute before, so they can, and the beauty in that is if there's like a spirit that you see that you like and it's 1 minute, it's like, why would you not have time? And really, I think that applies to anything like 5 minutes or less. It's like asking an audience to sit, we usually do our short programs, they're usually about 90 minutes at Dead Center. and they're like mixtape kind of programs. You know, we don't do just animated or just live action. And so there's rarely, if there's something that we're really rooting for and it's really short like that, then it's just easy to say, it can be 95 minutes. We like that one.
And for the second question, we have tried to sell films that were older, and because of the pandemic, that's what happened. It's worth a conversation, and we can have those conversations with a lot of our buyers. And one of the things that we've been doing, experimenting with other filmmakers that have the same situation, is we have them change the whole title of the movie, which happens in distribution all the time. Also, don't be so precious about the name of your movie. And we also change the artwork all the time. But oftentimes we're changing the name, starting a brand new IMDb. Yes, if they click on the director and see, oh, they made 2 movies, oh, they both have the same art. Oh, clearly this happened. But I'm like, listen, we all had a horrific thing happen. There should be some leeway here. You know what I mean? And so I 100% empathize with those people, but you can expect a lower offer than usual for your film. I'm not saying it's dead in the water, but it's been devalued, and just expect that and understand that that's going to happen because people sell library titles. Basically, it's like selling movies in bulk, right? And so they sell a lot. That's a library title, and those come cheaper because they're older. And so that it's not dead. There's always a way forward. And if it's featured, hit me up. I'll do what I can.
And Paul's going to wrap us up.
Super quick note about dates, and circle this back to the note I was going to make on the previous question anyway. With shorts, it only matters so much with Oscar qualification because there's a cycle with Oscars, but I just had this with a filmmaker who had finished their film right before the pandemic hit and then didn't play anywhere, and then sent it to me this year just to watch because I know it, and he's like, it's too old now. I'm like, did it play anywhere? It's like, no. Then it's brand new. Because your date, technically, is your premiere at a festival. I'm like, that's when your film's going to come out in 2021. So nobody knows what you've been doing with it. Change the credit. Whatever. If you want to feel better, go in and edit one little thing on a credit or something. The point is, until it's played, it's brand new. So your clock starts then. So just in case you ever don't think the day we finished and said, okay, we're all done. That's not your completion date is the date you premiere at a festival, in the festival world and at the Oscar world.
So in wrapping up, I would say thank you to our sponsors. I'm sure you have tons of questions. Thank you to Paul Sloop, Sara Thompson, David Josh Lawerence, and Shawn Quirk. Also,